A ragged old man reaches out to touch the most expensive horse at a prestigious ranch, only to be mocked, insulted, and thrown out like dirt. But when his heartbreaking secret is revealed, the very people who humiliated him are left frozen in shock. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and follow for more powerful stories that will stay with you. Now, let's begin. It all happened at a well-known ranch, a place where only the finest and most valuable horses were sold. One afternoon, during the usual work hours, the employees noticed an elderly man entering the property. His clothes were visibly worn, frayed by years of hard labor and time itself. The manager, the secretary, and the rest of the staff exchanged puzzled glances, wondering what business a man like him could possibly have there. One of the stable hands smirked and muttered sarcastically, "Maybe he got lost, or mistook this place for some ordinary farm. Old folks don't see too well these days." His words sparked a few quiet chuckles among the others, who expected the old man to take one look at the exorbitant prices and leave, just as many humble visitors had done before him. But to everyone's surprise, he didn't turn back. Instead, he walked straight toward the section where the ranch's most expensive horses were displayed. No one had anticipated that. Every pair of eyes followed him, some out of curiosity, others with thinly veiled amusement. Someone should have approached him, but not a single person moved. The heavy silence was finally broken when the old man stopped in front of a majestic black stallion, his weathered hand slowly reaching out to touch its mane. Before he could, one of the salesmen rushed over and stepped in front of him. "Hey, sir, please keep your distance. These horses aren't for just anyone." The elderly man hesitated, then responded calmly, "But this horse is for sale, isn't it? I only want to see it up close." The salesman scoffed, his voice laced with disdain. "This stallion is one of the rarest breeds we have, descended from an exclusive Arabian bloodline. Only someone with deep pockets could afford a horse like this. And honestly, you don't look like that kind of buyer. So please, step back." The old man stood there quietly for a moment, his eyes fixed on the animal with a wistful expression. The manager, noticing the situation, decided to step in, but rather than easing the tension, he made it worse. "With all due respect, sir, I think it would be best if you left. Your presence here is unsettling our other clients, and to be frank, the smell of livestock and dirt on you might linger in the stables. We strive to maintain an impeccable atmosphere for our real buyers." The old man's face fell. "But I don't smell bad," he said softly. "I may be poor, but that doesn't mean I'm dirty." The manager let out a sigh and shook his head. "Enough of this. We all know you're not here to buy anything. You're just making our customers uncomfortable." The others stood by, watching in silence, none daring to speak up. A few murmured that it would be best to just throw him out. The old man could hear the quiet laughter around him, their mockery directed at his worn-out clothes and simple demeanor. The last thing he heard was the manager's cold, authoritative voice before he was escorted off the property. With his head lowered and shoulders heavy with humiliation, he left the ranch and trudged down the dusty road toward his village. Minutes later, a sharp voice echoed across the stables. "What's this? That old man left some filthy sack here. Someone get rid of it now." A new salesman, who had witnessed the entire exchange, stepped forward and picked up the bag. Unlike his colleagues, he saw no filth or neglect, just a forgotten belonging of a man who had been treated unfairly. Without a second thought, he grabbed the sack and sprinted after the old man, catching up with him along the dirt path. The man was still walking with his head down, lost in thought. "Sir, wait!" The old man turned around and saw the young salesman approaching, his crisp button-up shirt tucked neatly into his vest, a small bag clutched in one hand. "Oh, dear Lord, where is my head today?" the old man exclaimed. "With all this commotion, I completely forgot. Thank you, son." "No problem," the young man replied, though a slight hesitation lingered in his voice. Then curiosity got the better of him. "But tell me, why did you go into the ranch?" The old man let out a weary sigh, as if the question had stirred something heavy inside him. "Because I had my heart set on buying a horse." The salesman hesitated for a moment, his gut telling him this man might not be able to afford one. But then he recalled stories of simple folks who turned out to be wealthier than they appeared. "I hope you don't mind me asking, sir. I meant no offense." A sad smile flickered across the old man's face. "My wife and I spent years saving up for a horse. We live far out, and walking miles just to catch a bus has always been a struggle. But it wasn't just about convenience. We dreamed of riding together, of exploring new places side by side. But time passed, and prices kept rising." His voice trailed off, and he forced a weak smile. The young man listened closely, a quiet sense of empathy growing within him. "Maybe I can help you find one." She dreamed of that one. The old man inhaled deeply, his rough, calloused hands adjusting the brim of his worn-out hat. His gaze lingered on the dirt road ahead, winding endlessly into the horizon. The young salesman, Henry, stood patiently, sensing there was more to this silence than mere hesitation. "You know, son," Liam finally spoke, his voice fragile, trembling like leaves in the wind. "That black horse isn't just any animal to me. It's the dream of a lifetime." Henry noticed the way the old man's fingers gripped the brim of his hat, as if searching for strength in the memories about to unfold. "Bella, my wife, always had a deep connection with horses since she was a little girl. We met at a county fair in Texas 40 years ago." Liam's expression softened as he drifted back into the past. She was standing by the fence, watching a horse show. And oh, her eyes, they sparkled like stars. A wistful smile crossed his lips. "We made a promise to each other that one day we'd have our own horse. Not just any horse, but one that carried our dreams." His voice wavered. He swallowed hard. Henry noticed his hands trembling. "For years, we saved every penny we could. Bella took on extra sewing work. I picked up side jobs on weekends. We had this little box decorated with magazine clippings of horses. Our dream savings, she called it." His voice cracked on the last word. "And did you finally save enough?" Henry asked quietly, already fearing the answer. Liam let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, we did. 6 months ago, we finally had the money." He lifted his gaze to the sky as if searching for strength. "That very day, the day we counted the last dollar, Bella started coughing up blood." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "Lung cancer," the doctor said. "Late stage. We tried everything. Chemo, radiation, experimental treatments. Each treatment cost a fortune. But what does money matter when it comes to the life of someone we love?" Henry felt a lump in his throat as he watched a single tear slide down the wrinkled face of the old man. "Last night," Liam continued, his voice barely more than a whisper, "Bella took my hand and made me promise something." He pulled a faded photograph from his pocket. In it, a young woman smiled beside a horse, her eyes brimming with joy and life. "This is Bella 40 years ago," he said, pointing toward the distant stable where a black horse stood, its silhouette striking against the afternoon light. "And that—" His voice trailed off as he gestured toward the horse. "That one is just like the one in the photo." Henry looked down at the picture, then at the horse, and finally back at Liam, beginning to grasp the true weight of the story before him. What had first appeared to be just an unkempt old man in a stable was, in reality, a man carrying the burden of a promise, one that had endured for decades. How much time? Henry hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question. 3 weeks, Liam answered, already understanding what Henry was trying to ask. Maybe less. His voice wavered, breaking entirely as he struggled to go on. Henry felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a story about a horse. It was about love, sacrifice, and the desperate need to fulfill one last dream before time ran out completely. Liam, wait for me here, please. My shift is almost over. I'd like to try and help, Henry said, before hurrying back to the stable. By the time they made their way along the narrow dirt path leading to a small adobe house nestled in the hills, the sun had begun to set. Henry, a young stable worker, took in the sight of a carefully tended garden, its vibrant flowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. Bella planted each one herself, Liam said, noticing Henry's gaze. Even now, despite everything, she insists on tending to her roses every morning. Before they reached the door, a soft voice called from inside. Liam, is that you? Yes, my love, Liam answered, his voice shifting completely as he spoke to her. There was something in his tone, a tenderness that turned every word into a caress. Bella sat by the window, wrapped in a light blue shawl that only made her pale skin look even more delicate. Yet her eyes, they still held that same spark Liam had once described, as if they contained all the stars in the night sky. And who is this young man? She asked, offering Henry a gentle smile. This is Henry, my love, Liam said. He works at the stable. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. The stable where the horse is. At that, Bella's eyes lit up instantly. The black horse? She asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Did you see it, Liam? Liam sat beside her, taking her frail hands in his own. Yes, my love. It's just like the one in the photo. Just like that day in Valencia. Bella closed her eyes briefly, as if savoring a distant memory. Then she looked at Henry and said, You know, when we were young, Liam took me to see an Arabian horse exhibition. There was a black stallion, majestic as the night itself. At that moment, we made a promise to each other, that one day we would have a horse of our own. She coughed lightly, and Liam immediately reached for a glass of water, bringing it to her lips. Henry watched as her frail hands trembled while holding it. The doctors, Bella continued, her voice weaker now. They say I don't have much time left. But do you know what saddens me the most? It's not death itself. She paused, her breath uneven, and for a moment the room felt unbearably still. It's leaving behind our dream unfinished. My love, please, Liam began, but she raised a hand, silencing him. Let me finish. She turned to Henry, her eyes now glistening with unshed tears. Every penny we saved, every single dollar we put aside, it was all for that dream. But when the cancer came, her voice wavered, dreams had to wait. And yet, Henry, do you know what I've learned? Sometimes dreams are all we have left. Henry felt a lump rise in his throat as Bella reached beneath her shawl and pulled out a small, worn notebook. Look, she said, opening it eagerly. Inside were dozens of sketches, each one a black horse. I draw one every day. It's how I keep the dream alive. She turned to the latest page, tracing the edges with her frail fingers. This last one, it's exactly like the horse from the stable, isn't it? Henry stared at the drawing, The details were striking: the proud stance, the flowing mane, the sharp, intelligent eyes. He recognized the horse instantly. "Bella," Liam whispered, "you need to rest now." She nodded, but before Henry could leave, she reached for his hand. "Will you promise to visit me again?" she asked, her grip surprisingly firm despite her weakness. "I'd love to hear more about the horse." Henry felt the weight of her request. It wasn't just about visiting, it was about keeping a dream alive. "I promise, Doña Bella," he said, knowing those words carried far more meaning than a simple agreement. As he stepped outside, Bella's coughing echoed through the night, softened only by Liam's gentle murmurs of comfort. And in that moment, Henry made a decision. One that wouldn't just change his life, but the lives of everyone connected to this story. He couldn't sleep that night. Sitting at the kitchen table in his small apartment on the outskirts of town, he wrapped his hands around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His mind kept drifting back to that modest house in the hills, to Bella's notebook, to the magnificent black horse that meant the world to that couple. The clock on the wall struck 3 in the morning. For the 10th time that night, he got up and paced the room. His eyes landed on a framed photograph hanging in his bedroom, a picture of himself at 12 years old, sitting atop a horse beside his grandfather. The memory crashed over him like a wave. "Horses are more than just animals," his grandfather used to say. "They're guardians of dreams." The words echoed in his mind as he thought of the black horse in the stable. $200,000. That was the horse's price. Henry grabbed his savings book. In 2 years, he had managed to save $70,000, hoping to one day buy his own. "Oh God," he breathed, running a hand over his face. At the stable that week alone, 3 horses had been sold for far more. People walked in, chose a horse, paid, and left, as casually as if they were buying bread at a bakery. But to Liam and Bella, this particular horse was a lifetime of dreams. Henry reached for the ledger where he recorded the stable's sales. As a salesman, Henry earned a 5% commission on each sale if he managed to sell the black horse at its standard price. "No," he murmured to himself, shaking his head. "There has to be another way." He pushed himself up from his chair and strode over to his desk, where he kept all the contracts and paperwork for the stable. Among the stacks of documents, his fingers found an old photograph, slightly yellowed with age. It had been taken the day the stable first opened. In the image, a young Nate, the current owner, stood beaming beside his first prize-winning horse. Henry let out a slow breath, then grabbed his phone. It was nearly 4 in the morning, but he knew Nate always arrived at the stables before dawn. In less than an hour, he'd be able to speak with him face to face. As he got dressed, his eyes landed on the sketch Bella had drawn of the black horse. Before she left, she had pressed a copy into his hands, her voice filled with quiet insistence. "Some dreams need to be shared in order to come true." "And some dreams," Henry whispered, carefully tucking the drawing into the pocket of his shirt, "need a miracle." He locked his apartment door behind him and hurried down the stairs. The sky was still draped in darkness, but faint traces of light stretched along the horizon. As he walked toward the stables, a heavy truth settled over him. What he was about to do could cost him his job. But the memory of Bella, seated by the window, sketching horses she would never be able to ride, weighed heavier on his conscience than any professional risk. He found himself repeating her words. "Dreams are all we have left." Holding on to that certainty, Henry quickened his pace, heading toward the stable where Nate would be. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn a 40-year-old dream into reality. The golden light of dawn spilled into the stable's office as Henry stepped inside. he found Nate tending to his old white horse, Lightning. The stable owner, a man in his 60s with sharp eyes and silver-streaked hair, raised an eyebrow at his young salesman's unexpected appearance at this hour. "Nate," Henry began, his voice unsteady, "I need to tell you a story." For the next 20 minutes he spoke about his meeting with Liam, the 40-year love story, Bella's illness, and the dream of the black horse. As he talked, he reached into his pocket and carefully pulled out the drawing Bella had made. Nate took it with deliberate hands, his gaze widening as he studied the delicate yet precise strokes that captured the horse's form. "This drawing—" His voice trailed off, his expression shifting from curiosity to something deeper. "She's never seen the horse in person." "No, sir," Henry replied. "Only from memories, ones that go back 40 years. Without a word, Nate turned and walked toward the framed photograph on the wall, the same one Henry had come across the night before. "Look at this, Henry." In the faded picture, a black horse stood tall, a mirror image of the one in the stable today. Seated atop it was a much younger Nate. "This was Shadow," he murmured, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "My first real horse. He taught me the true value of an animal like this." He fell silent, lost in the memory for a moment. Then he turned back to Henry. "Do you know why I keep this stable running?" "To raise the best horses in the region, sir." Nate smiled, though there was something wistful in the gesture. "No. I keep this place because I believe every horse has a story to tell, a life to change." He glanced at the black horse outside, then down at Bella's drawing. "The horse we have now, he's Shadow's son, my first major show horse." He looked at the sketch once more, turning it over in his hands. "And now, this drawing, this memory, so vivid." "Nate, No, Henry." The stable owner cut him off gently. "Say nothing more." With quiet resolve, Nate reached for his hat and picked up the keys to his truck. "Let's go find the horse. We have a visit to make." An hour later, Nate's truck, with a trailer carrying a majestic black horse, pulled up in front of Liam's house. The sun was already high in the sky, casting golden light over Bella's garden, where the roses glistened with the morning dew. Hearing the sound of the truck, Liam stepped outside, his eyes widening in astonishment as he recognized the trailer. From the window, Bella appeared, her hands trembling as she covered her mouth in surprise. "Liam," Nate approached, extending his hand. "I'm Nate Rufus, owner of the stable. Sir, about yesterday, I'm truly sorry." "There is nothing to forgive," Nate interrupted kindly, before gesturing toward the trailer. "This horse is special. He is the son of Sombra, my very first horse, the one your wife saw in Valencia 40 years ago." At the mention of that memory, Bella, now standing at the door, leaning against Liam, let out a small sob. Nate's voice grew thick with emotion. "Some horses," he continued, "aren't meant to be sold. They exist to fulfill dreams." With that, he placed the black horse's reins into Liam's hands. "He is yours now, a gift in honor of the love that kept this dream alive for so many years." The black horse neighed softly, as if sealing the moment. Bella, tears glistening in her eyes, stepped forward, reaching out a trembling hand to stroke the horse's mane. "He's beautiful," she whispered, "just like in my dreams." Henry watched the scene unfold, feeling his own tears welling up. Nate placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, Henry, the worth of a horse isn't measured in money, but in dreams fulfilled." The black horse lowered its head as if recognizing in Bella the young girl who, 40 years ago, had fallen in love with his father at a show in Valencia. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold as Liam secured the saddle onto the black horse's back. Bella, wearing a soft blue dress that matched the sky, watched every movement with bright, eager eyes. "Are you ready, my love?" Liam asked, reaching out his hand to her. Bella nodded, her face glowing with a smile that seemed to erase the years. Henry and Nate stood close, ready to help if needed, yet giving them enough space for this moment. With infinite gentleness, Liam helped Bella onto the black horse. As if sensing the significance of the occasion, the horse stood completely still. When she finally settled into the saddle, her hands shaking as she grasped the reins, a single tear slipped down her cheek. 40 years, she murmured, running her fingers through the horse's mane. 40 years waiting for this moment? Liam mounted behind her, wrapping his arms protectively around her as he took hold of the reins. The horse began to move, its hooves pressing a steady rhythm into the earth as it carried them across the open field behind the house. "Faster, Liam!" Bella called out, her voice thick with emotion. "I want to feel the wind!" Liam loosened the reins slightly, and as if understanding her desire, the horse quickened its pace. The wind rushed past them, lifting Bella's dress so that it billowed like blue wings. Her laughter, clear and pure as a mountain spring, rang through the open field. "Look, Liam!" she cried, stretching out her arms. "We're flying!" Henry noticed Nate discreetly dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. The owner of the ranch murmured something about how the horse had finally found its true home. The sun drifted closer to the horizon, casting everything in a golden light that felt almost otherworldly. Bella and Liam rode in wide, sweeping circles, as if trying to embrace the entire world with their joy. With every graceful movement, the horse beneath them seemed to dance. When they finally came to a stop, Bella's cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes gleaming like the evening stars. Liam helped her dismount, and as soon as her feet touched the ground, she wrapped her arms around the horse's neck, whispering softly. The horse answered with a gentle whinny. Then, turning to Nate and Henry, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "You haven't just given us a horse, you've given us wings." Liam took his wife's hand and added, "This moment is worth more than all the treasures in the world." That night, as the first stars began to scatter across the sky, Henry watched the couple sitting together on their garden bench. Bella's roses filled the air with their delicate fragrance, while the black horse grazed peacefully nearby. Liam held Bella close, her head resting against his shoulder, the smile still lingering on her lips. "You know, Henry," Nate said quietly, "in all my years on this ranch, I've never seen a horse find its true owner like this. It's as if it had been waiting for them all this time." Henry nodded, realizing he had just witnessed something rare and extraordinary. Not just the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, but proof that true love, when nurtured with decades of hope and perseverance, has the power to create miracles. As they said their goodbyes, Bella embraced Henry and whispered, "Thank you for listening to our story." Then, with a peaceful smile, she added, "Now I can go in peace, knowing that Liam will have a dream to keep alive." The black horse let out a soft whinny into the night, as if sealing that eternal promise of love. And beneath the vast, star-strewn sky of their little ranch, Liam and Bella remained in each other's arms, the guardians of a dream 40 years in the making, one that would now live on forever. Wow. What a journey this story has taken us on. I just want to take a moment to say, this story isn't real. But does that make it any less meaningful? Absolutely not. Because stories like this aren't just about what happened. They're about what could happen. and, more importantly, what they teach us. At its heart, this is a story about love, sacrifice, and the power of holding on to a dream. Liam and Bella spent 40 years saving, hoping, and believing. And in the end, it wasn't about owning a horse. It was about keeping a promise, about proving that love doesn't fade with time and that kindness can change lives. And let's talk about Henry and Nate for a second. They didn't have to do anything. They could have ignored Liam, dismissed his story like everyone else did. But they chose to listen. They chose compassion. And that single act of kindness turned an old man's heartbreak into the most beautiful moment of his life. Maybe that's what makes this story so powerful. It reminds us that money isn't everything, that dreams matter, and that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can be the greatest miracle for someone else. So, what did you take away from this story? What moment hit you the hardest? Let's talk in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story touched you, don't forget to share it with someone who might need a reminder that kindness still exists. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing in the magic of stories. I'll see you in the next one.